Gotta do the don't go back. It's TSM, one sip at a time, breaking the chains that held me blind. I'm learning to live, finding my way, step by step. I'm breaking away with every pour. I'm claiming my life. It's TSM, I'm ready to thrive. Yeah, it's TSM.
Welcome everybody to the live Sinclair Method Q&A. Hey Samara, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. We got to meet in person a couple weeks ago. That was the second time. So that was so cool to meet you and see you in person. I feel like I know you so well because I've known you for a few years now. It doesn't feel like we're just internet friends.
Remote.
Yeah.
Remote workers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the crazy thing is like the last time we spent together was the first time we met for the first time and we went whale watching. Remember? That was such a cool experience. I had never done that before and we just talked about TSM the whole time on the boat.
Yeah. It's so cool to like connect with someone who in person who understands TSM because that very rarely happens and it's such a unique part of my story and your story and it's something we relate on among other things. But yeah, it was really cool to meet you in person. Again, see you in person. Well, welcome everybody. So glad you're here with us on this Q&A. Samara and I do these together publicly about once a month just to answer your questions about the Sinclair method, provide support if we can. We're streaming on a few different platforms here. So if you have questions for us related to your Sinclair method journey, please drop it in the chat wherever you are coming from and we will get to you. We usually can get to all questions depending on how many people are here. Of course, we're not doctors, so we're not going to be giving medical advice, but we speak from our own experience with naltrexone and TSM pretty openly, and we've been coaches to others in this field. I mean, me since 2018. Samara, you started coaching people when? 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so years now. Well, welcome everybody. Samara, you messaged me about a topic you wanted to discuss on this call. Do you remember it now?
Yeah, it's like deep. It's really deep.
Okay. Do you want to start there? Is that okay?
Yeah. What was it about? Can you remind me?
Yeah. So as part of our program at Thrive, we have some of our members have one-on-one coaching. And there's a person that Samara was working with who is struggling with essentially breaking the link between alcohol being a coping skill. And I see this a lot. Maybe some people here can relate, where for so long, for years or decades, we've turned to alcohol to cope with stress or trauma or just difficulties in life. And we really don't have any other tools to cope with those things. And even on naltrexone, it can be really hard to deal with what life throws at us, apart from alcohol. So for a lot of people, especially if they're going through something hard, we can still turn to alcohol even if we're taking naltrexone correctly. So does that jog your memory of what you wanted to chat about? I know it's a very complex and deep issue. So I just wanted to open up the conversation and see if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, it is complex, but sometimes what happens is that people will begin reducing their drinking on the Sinclair method because their drinking is like the acute symptoms that they're having in their life and consequences are from their drinking. But once they start reducing, all of this stuff starts coming up that they were not prepared to handle. They just don't have the life skills essentially to navigate these hurts and this pain, past trauma, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they start to unravel, potentially unravel emotionally because they're not using their one coping tool, but because they're trying to address that. And then, then this comes up and it's like, it just took me on like kind of a time of contemplation. And I just pondered a lot about this, like how can we really support individuals who are using alcohol to kind of mask this, life kind of these life things, traumas, events that have happened to them, and how can we support them? I know that really at that point, it would be great to find a good therapist,
Yeah.
someone who can really help you unpack these life hurts and stuff. But yeah, it was just an interesting topic for me.
Yeah, I mean, I personally relate with that as a daily drinker for 10 years. I certainly leaned on alcohol to cope. In fact, like sometimes when tragic things would happen in life, the back of my mind, I'd secretly be like, oh, cool. That means I can go get whiskey and numb out and go on a bender for a few days or weeks or whatever. Um, and
Wow.
I'm not an expert in, nervous system or trauma or anything like that, but I do learn about this stuff. And it's just interesting to me how truly with our nervous system, like we prefer what's familiar, even if it's destructive to us. So if we've been drinking a lot for years or decades and destroying our health and our life and whatever, that is more comfortable for us because it's familiar than the alternative. And it takes time of challenging our beliefs and our emotions and stepping outside our comfort zone to really learn to cope in new ways because it's terrifying. Like our nervous system sees it as a threat to, go on a walk in response to a stressful day as opposed to drowning ourselves.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. We tend to prefer the familiar hell to the unknown. Anything that's unknown is just not what our brain and our primitive body prefers. It's just
Yeah.
wild. We have to like really go outside of ourselves intentionally to try to build these other coping skills.
Yeah. And that's something that I think catches a lot of people by surprise on the Sinclair method. I know it did me. And I think that's when like a decent number of people join our program. They've already gotten naltrexone. They kind of tried it on their own for a bit. And then they'll join Thrive and be like, I realized I need the support or the accountability. Because I know for me, I was like, cool, this pill's going to help me drink less. And it did. It started to. But a few months in, as the alcohol fog was lifting and my craving was going down, I was drinking less. I reached this like crux in the road. Like if I want to take it to the next level, like truly being a normal drinker, someone who's not dependent on alcohol anymore, I've got to deal with all this stuff that was coming up, memories that had surfaced that I had forgotten about and didn't know I was drinking to escape. Just patterns, simple habits of coping with alcohol in response to like work stress, for example, or bigger stresses in life. And it was like, I just remember this day so vividly. It was like a crux I was at on my TSM journey where I was like, okay, I can keep doing what I've always done, which is like drinking. And I can even drink on naltrexone. Like I'll just take this pill to help me drink a little bit less, but I'll kind of keep drinking in response to these stresses and traumas and whatever, just to numb out. Or I have to like face them head on and deal with them in order to break up or break apart me relying on alcohol as a coping skill. And that was where I developed the mantra of like, the only way out is through. Like the only way I'm going to learn to deal with anger or sadness or depression or, just daily stress and not feel like I have to lean on alcohol as a crutch is I've got to learn to deal with those things. I've got to experience them without reaching for a drink. And that's hard, even on naltrexone. Like it's easier because we're not like I wasn't knee-jerk craving a drink and just automatically turning to that. The desire was down, but it's like I still had to feel it and work through it and teach myself other coping skills and be super uncomfortable. I often remember the first time I experienced like genuine anger on the Sinclair method, and I felt like I was having a panic attack. I was like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. But I got through it, and in a few hours it subsided, and it was like this natural high that I felt just being able to be like, whoa, I had like a really hard encounter and I got through it and I didn't need to run to alcohol to cope with it.
Wow.
What was that like for you? Like, I mean, I know you were more of a binge drinker, so you weren't like a daily drinker like I was, but how did you go from somebody who would, turn to alcohol to cope with whatever life threw at you to, being where you are now to where I know you don't turn to alcohol in that way anymore?
Yeah, no, it's such a great topic. Something that you said that you would plan your binges, right? Or you would plan as a response to these bad things that happen. So similar to that, what I would do is I would allow like all the life stress and like work stress and just everyday living stress, like
Mhm.
I would allow it to build up and build up over, because I didn't know how to take good care of myself at the time, right? So I just kind of allow these things to build up daily, weekly. And then all of a sudden, when I started feeling like the real pressure from all of that, I would start to fantasize about binging. And
Wow.
so I would plan in my head, I would plan a whole binge, like a whole weekend. Be like, okay, I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna get this wine, and then I'm gonna go get that drink, and then I'm gonna get like a whole plan. And that was partly taking care of my stress
Yeah.
by escaping, right? I was escaping into this fantasy of like what my binge was gonna be,
Yeah.
because this is what I did over decades, right? This is how I ended up coping with stress instead of taking really good care of myself, like getting good sleep and eating healthy and drinking enough water and just like the basics, right? I would just pile on all this stress and lack of sleep and not eating right, and all of this stuff over the course of like days to weeks, and then I would have this blowout binge that was taking care of everything. Yeah, right. It just made everything worse. So,
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate with that. Like, I wasn't a binge drinker. I mean, I binge drank, but not like, okay, I can have 4 alcohol-free days and then I'll binge on the weekend. Like, that would happen occasionally, but usually it was an everyday thing. But I hear that from binge drinkers, which perhaps can be something that's challenging on TSM for them because, like you said, you kind of go days or weeks without drinking and it builds and builds and builds. And then when that trigger comes, it's just like, that's it, I'm going to send it. And it can cause people to not take naltrexone during those times or just drink through it because they, take it and they're drinking whiskey or something like that. But I think that's a common pattern with binge drinkers. It's like they can go stretches of time, but it builds and builds and builds. And then when it comes to a head, it's a binge session, which can be very dangerous, as we know.
yeah, and it could last days, depending on, I had to work everything around my work schedule,
Yeah.
but I would just escape into that time. And yeah, it was not really helping at all.
Yeah. We have a Thrive member. I just had a coaching call with him a couple weeks ago, and he is someone who was a binge drinker, and he responded very quickly to naltrexone. Like, he was more of like a vodka binge drinker, and he was pretty motivated and immediately put vodka aside and started drinking wine. But he, like, from the beginning of his TSM journey, he would like drink 1 glass and not be able to drink more. And it became very easy for him to control his drinking, like almost from day one, but it's like it worked too quickly because the binges were a part of his life and he was hoping for more of like a gradual reduction, but
Oh, wow.
it was, a quick response. But he's doing well now. He kind of fell off the method and then he's getting back on. But it's
Oh,
just,
well, cool.
even with severe drinking like that, it's amazing how some people can respond super quickly to it.
Yeah, I had a client once that told me the medicine worked too fast for my life to catch up to.
Mm,
That's exactly it right there. It's
yeah,
that, because we're used to these coping methods. We've been doing them for decades, some of us. And now that way of coping is not there anymore. What do we do?
exactly. It's an adjustment. It's an adjustment for sure. Um, Which, yeah. Okay, so sorry, I just see this comment from sit-ins for Sidis. Sorry, I can't read from, but they say my doctor says I can't have it because my liver is bad. So they won't prescribe
Yeah.
naltrexone because your liver is bad.
Hmm.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's honestly pretty rare. I wonder if they did a
Hmm.
liver screen and like what the data showed. There have been recent studies even saying that people with liver disease were put on naltrexone and it helped them with their craving or to cut back on their drinking. So I don't know if you went to a naltrexone specialist or just a general doctor. It wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion from another doctor. If you're here in the US, there are online treatment providers that will,
Oh,
meet with you to do a liver screen and assess. Yes, I'm curious, yes to what?
a naltrexone specialist? Or, I mean, a TSM specialist?
Oh, I wonder. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe consider getting a second opinion. Of course, we don't know what their reasoning was, but it wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion. That's disappointing. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I have personal experience with 3 clients where their enzymes were elevated. Their doctors were concerned, and they started the protocol. And they each waited. They were 100% compliant with naltrexone, and then they waited 90 days, and then they retested, and miraculously their liver numbers went down and were in the healthy range.
Wow.
And the doctors in these 3 cases were just astounded. They were just beyond, they were so excited. So, because the reduced drinking, heals our liver.
Exactly. And I've heard that the other doctors we work with talk about that. Like, even if someone has elevated liver enzymes when they start naltrexone, and naltrexone is processed through the liver as they're on it, just like you said, it's the reduction in drinking improves the health of their liver. Okay, so they're saying they have to make an echo from my liver. Maybe she gives it to me when she sees the damage. Yeah. Keep us posted. I don't know if you're in the US or if you're in another country. But welcome to everyone who's just joined us. So glad you're here for this Q&A. If you have questions about the Sinclair method, we would love to address them for you. Feel free to drop them in the chat, and we would love to support. Let's see. Oh yeah. So what's going on Instagram? Okay. So Samara, what's going on in your world as far, I know you've been working a lot one-on-one with people, coaching a lot of people in Thrive and outside of Thrive. I'm just curious, like, what are you observing as far as common challenges people are having with naltrexone and the Sinclair method? I tend to notice like themes can come up with clients or in my group calls. I was curious if there's things you're noticing challenge-wise for people on TSM that you're working with.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I need to think about it a little bit. Just that one that I mentioned is like the thing that's popping up for me right now is just the learning how to cope in new ways, in healthy ways, so that we can deal with the things that are coming up for us in our lives, like our memories and our past pain and hurts and traumas. What does that look like to learn how to, even the willingness?
Yeah.
That's something that I'm seeing across the board. There's either a willingness, like an openness to wanting to learn these things, or there's a closed-minded approach. It's just like they're resistant to learning these new strategies, these new coping skills. Everything's a skill, If you want to approach life in a different way, you're going to have to skill up. And first, we have to be willing to even see what skills we need to learn, And so the willingness is a big thing. And that is something I work with clients my one-on-one clients with, and it has to come from them. They have to be willing to and open to a different perspective, a different approach. What is a different approach? If this is no longer working for you, how can you shift and approach it differently?
Yeah. And that's something that like I've been reflecting a lot lately on how much my identity had to change in order to heal my relationship with alcohol. Like if I was taking naltrexone, but I wasn't willing to see myself and my relationship with alcohol in a different light, I feel like I could have stayed stuck for a long time, even taking naltrexone. And what I mean by that is like, I think a lot of the beliefs that we hold, whether consciously or unconsciously, drive who we think we are. Like, even I noticed that with silly habits. Like, I like to drink a cup of black coffee in the morning. And I'm like, if someone gives me a latte, I'm like, wait, like, that's not who I am. I don't drink lattes. Like, even just something as silly as that can be like challenging to my identity. And I think we're creatures of habits, like as human beings. And that's something that when we start on naltrexone, if we've believed for years that, alcohol is our only method of coping, or life is too hard to, have days without alcohol that are enjoyable, or I had this happen to me when I was a kid, so I have to drink to cope with it, or I don't know who I am if I'm not drinking, or I love that bottle of wine. Like all of these beliefs that we carry around, regardless of whether we're aware of it or not, drive who we think we are, and that drives our behaviors. So when you talk about that willingness for people, like when we work with people, it's not like you have to have it all figured out on day one or
Right.
anything like that, but that willingness to try new things. And sometimes we're in such a dark place with our drinking and our alcohol fog that that willingness isn't even there. Like there's no motivation. Maybe you're
Mhm.
taking naltrexone, but there's no motivation to do anything else. Or
Mhm.
sometimes there's no motivation to take naltrexone for some people. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how does someone go from being, and I don't know if you have a direct answer, a clear answer, or just some thoughts on it, but how does someone go from being in a place of completely, unwilling to make this change? Like, what's a mindset shift or question they can ask themselves, or a mantra they can start reciting to help themselves get out of this, alcohol fog and way of thinking and believing that is not helping them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to say that I work with my clients on curiosity. Like that's the
Mhm.
first step to all of this is like, can you become a little bit curious about your behavior, the drinking, the patterns, the coping, like all of these things that you're kind of you're here, you're wanting to address them.
Yeah.
Can you become a little bit curious about what's going on? Like, why is this happening? Or what, it's just that curiosity can really spark more. It can lead to willingness
Yeah.
because once you start seeing, so I have a client and she was very resistant. Like she felt like, ugh, I got to take the pill,
Yeah.
like, ugh, I don't want to take this pill. It's going to take away my enjoyment. Like my glasses of wine are my enjoyment every evening. And
Yeah.
this is going to take that away. And so I totally understand like where she was coming from because I was there. I understand. And you were there too, Katie.
Yep.
And it's like, so she's being compliant, but she's kind of like kicking and screaming, not kicking and screaming, but like kind of fighting it a
Resisting.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, but as she started, it's been a few weeks now, she's brand new. She's, and I've talked to her a lot about curiosity. She has started to become more curious. She didn't need to be willing right off the bat, but at least she's curious to see what's underneath this habit. And so because of that curiosity, she came up with some beautiful insights. She figured out that her drinking was a form of connection. I told you about this, a form of
Oh,
connection. Like she feels
yeah.
connected when she drinks her wine in the evenings. It's how she feels connected. And she does lack that social space,
Mhm.
socially, where she could get that connection in other ways. So it is something that we're lacking in, or something that we can work toward having, that can replace that connection of what the wine is doing.
Yeah. So when you say connection, was it connection with herself or with others?
It's more like feeling connected to something,
Because it's like
um,
a relationship with
a
the alcohol,
relationship.
right?
It's a
I can
relationship.
relate with that because it was like when I would drink and get drunk, it was an escape into my own world in a sense, like my own little bubble. It was this alcohol bubble. And I would like day drink and go around town and like be so happy. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that was my world. Like I know you and I have talked about how drinking was our purpose and the thing that we looked forward to. And I was just doing an interview this morning with someone and we were talking about that, how, and I was big on this too, and I still am, but that cultivating meaning and purpose in life apart from alcohol, something bigger than you, and it can be whatever it is that speaks to you, is so vital to this healing journey because without that, alcohol keeps us, when we're stuck in alcohol use disorder, it just keeps us in short-term thinking. Like, we're thinking about the next drink, the next binge, recovering from it. We're not necessarily dreaming about our future and looking forward to it and making goals. And maybe we are, but we're missing the mark all the time. So I know for me, I would just like let myself forget about the dreams and goals I had because alcohol was my primary focus. And I was so focused on that just impulsive, meeting that impulsive urge I had every single day to drink. So as we heal on this treatment, I just think that having something that gives your life meaning and purpose is vital to that, because it creates this thing that we're serving that's bigger than ourselves. I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning when I was on TSM.
I just
Did you
read
read
it.
it? You did?
I just finished it like a couple weeks ago.
What did you think of it? Because like he kind of attributes his survival in the concentration camp to having meaning in his life. And that was part of his work, was this like logotherapy, I think it was called. He was a
Yeah.
therapist. And he would observe that people that didn't have meaning would lose their will to live, and they would just let themselves die. And of course, there were other reasons people were dying and whatnot. But he just attributed his ability to survive the concentration camp to him having this purpose in life that was bigger than the current circumstance. And I feel like when we're stuck in AUD, we lose sight of that. Like, alcohol strips us of that. And I mean, messing with our brain chemistry and our dopamine, it can inhibit our will to live, even because it shoots our dopamine down when we're in alcohol withdrawal. And when we have low dopamine, we don't even want to get out of bed. And if we have too low of dopamine, we lose our will to live. So, but that's something that's tricky. I feel like we have to crawl out of that when we're on TSM and healing our AUD. It's not something that just necessarily comes out of on its own. We have to really be hungry for and seek out the things that give us meaning and pleasure. But I'd love to hear what you thought of the book, how it spoke to you.
Oh yeah, I loved his whole mindset going into the experience. Like, he was viewing it from kind of like this observational perspective of like a psychiatrist. He was viewing everyone's behavior inside the camps. And they even did studies after, and they figured out that the majority of the people that survived the concentration camps was because they had some sense of meaning to their lives, or that they even applied meaning to their suffering. That's another thing, that they had a purpose to their suffering. Their suffering meant something to them. If they could prevail and withstand that suffering, it was for a reason. Yeah. Which is what I kind of attributed my early on in TSM. All of these things came up about my past and all the decades that I had wasted, drinking, and why did I turn to alcohol, in my life. And I did apply it without reading this book. I did apply this kind of meaning to it. Like, if this is what happened to me, then I am so much, when I come out of this, I'm going to be so much of a better person. Like, I'm going to be a better version of myself because I went through all of this.
Yeah.
Decades of it.
Yes. I know, being able to find that kind of, I guess, purpose or reason behind it. Like, I wanted to ask you about this because this came up in our program recently, where one of our members was talking about how they feel like and we hear this a lot, but they feel like they've wasted so many years with their drinking, and they have so much regret around it. They weren't there for their kids or their work, and they're healing now and they're thankful for that. But it's so easy to get caught in like the regret of our past. And I'm curious, because this is something that still comes up for me from time to time. I try not to dwell there, but I will look back and be like, oh man, if I wouldn't have, done that, I would have never gotten the addiction. And, if I would have known this, I would have never been addicted to alcohol. But the way I kind of cope with it, and I'm so thankful to do the work in the Sinclair method world that I do, because I attribute that to my healing journey. Like, I can't say for sure, like, how I would have responded to TSM had I not had my YouTube channel. And I got so much meaning from leading groups and helping other people. And like you said, seeing a purpose and a reason in the suffering. Like, I didn't just waste 10 years of my life drinking. Now I can relate with people on a very deep level who also struggle with that, and I can help them. And for me, that's been paramount to my healing. And I attribute that to reaching success and staying, healed years and years later. But I was curious to hear from you. And also, just again, welcome to folks who are joining. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Do you ever dwell on the past and like the decades you lost to alcohol and things like that? And if you do, how do you cope with that or get your mind out of that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's so interesting. I've turned it around, like I've reframed it. So in a sense, it is a little bit of dwelling, like I lost a lot of time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I say to myself, in your career, like in your productivity and in my hopes and my dreams for my life, I'm around the age of 23.
Okay.
Like
Right now?
yeah, like at my age at 48, gonna be 49, I'm actually 23 when it comes to like getting my career started and starting a life, like a future, and with my dreams, pursuing my dreams. Like I'm actually 23 because I did lose more than 2 decades of time where I was my purpose was drinking and I was just living for the next fix, So I wasn't pursuing those things, or I had dreams of them, but like you said, I just never got anywhere with it,
Yeah.
So I kind of reframed it in that way, that I'm 23 again, and that's okay. I like thinking of myself as a 23-year-old. That is something, yeah. And then the other thing is, I since TSM, I've really thrown myself into this mindful self-compassion work. I take courses on it. I'm actually going to become certified in it. It's like this
Oh,
whole
cool.
thing. I gravitated towards it, and so the skills that I've learned in self-compassion
Yeah.
have gone a long way to help heal the past and the memories and the pain. I just apply these techniques to basically it's offering yourself incredible, extraordinary self-compassion for your mistakes and your failures. And I talk to myself like I would like a best friend, like a person that really cares and loves me. That's how I speak to myself about my past. So it's helped tremendously, tremendously. I really encourage people to dive in a little to the self-compassion, because I feel like that will just help amplify your TSM journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you do such a good job of leading with that in your coaching sessions and like what you do inside Thrive. And I like that's something I hear from our members, which I love about it. We have people on our calls who are like, "Oh, I didn't take naltrexone last week and I went on a bender." And they're like, "I love that I can be honest with this and I'm not going to be judged. I'm going to be met with like compassion and relatability and suggestions if I want it, And I think that's so important because we've all heard stories, maybe we've even done it, where it's like, we go to AA and we're pretending that we're sober and then we're going to get drunk afterward because we can't be honest with where we're at. I wasn't speaking to you. I think you told me those stories. But we can't be honest with where we're at. And like, no healing is going to be done if we have to like lie about our progress or our lack of progress or our mistakes. And so I always think it's so important to foster that like safety and being honest with where we're at. And like you said, treating yourself with compassion. Like I noticed for me, I've talked about this a lot, but on my TSM journey, anytime I would make a mistake or drink too much, and I think I did this as I was drinking for years, but didn't realize it, but I would just automatically beat myself up. Like, you idiot, why did you do that? You should have known better. You should have done this. That's where my brain went automatically. I don't know why or how, but I realized when I was on the Sinclair method, like I have to be kinder to myself because this is only digging me deeper in the hole to beat myself up and make myself feel terrible and stressed. And so this is kind of vulnerable to share, but I realized when I was drinking a lot that I genuinely hated myself and I treated myself like someone I hated. I abused myself with alcohol and other drugs for a decade. And when you hate yourself and you don't treat yourself like someone you respect and care for, like that's going to show up in, your drinking and drug use or whatever self-destructive patterns you have. Like our alcohol use disorder is such a self-destructive thing. But I had to literally get out of that, I had to imagine myself as my mom or my sister. Like, how would I talk to them if they made these mistakes? And that's how I learned to notice those thoughts that were so abusive toward myself and talk to myself more compassionately. Like, okay, yeah, you made a mistake. What can you learn from it? Like, everyone makes mistakes. And doing that was like, there were so many key things that I feel helped my TSM journey that aren't just like black and white, take the medication and measure your drinks. It's those little nuanced experiences of personal development and just greater insight and understanding into what it takes to heal. But I noticed that with people in our community, like they'll come in and they'll be so hard on themselves, like, oh, I drank too much last night, I'm so mad at myself. But as they progress, they'll like spin it around and be like, yeah, I did that, but I learned this, and or today's a new day, or today I'm gonna have an alcohol-free day. And they'll just turn it around. And I think that's so important to this healing journey, because yeah, it just digs us deeper into that hole when we're hard on ourselves and we're mean to ourselves, and it doesn't allow this space for healing, this care. I love that she says in the chat, this is so relatable. I'm so happy that it's
Yes.
helpful for you, that you're here. So what has it done for you, Samara, to be more compassionate to yourself? And like, how did you come about this? How did you learn this? Because I don't think that was part of your healing before TSM, right?
No, definitely not. I had no idea about self-compassion. Just like you, I absolutely hated myself. I didn't even know the extent of how bad I hated myself. But every time I broke a promise to myself, I was digging the grave of
Yeah.
self-compassion. There was no self-compassion. There was just utter, yeah, I did not like myself. How did I start? Well, I started by reading like a small little book on Audible, or listened to this little book called The Power of Self-Compassion. And then there's this whole field of research, and Kristen Neff, I'll just say her name, but she leads up that whole field, and it's amazing. Like the science of it, it can reverse PTSD.
Wow. So this isn't just like woo-woo, be nice to yourself. There's science behind it.
This is science backed.
Wow.
This is new research within the last 10 years. And this field has emerged, and they figured out that people with PTSD, they can heal the PTSD. You can heal PTSD. I used to think if you had PTSD, that's it. You just you live with it. No, you can use self-compassion, and these are skills. We have to train it's a mindfulness training, but you can really alleviate a lot of your own suffering through these skills. And so I just ended up going in that direction with taking a course, and then another course, and then now I really want to get certified, because I'm such a huge proponent for this work. It's just, we tend to isolate ourselves when we're suffering. We think that we're the only one dealing with all of these problems, and we isolate. That is even more, it causes more suffering. If we can understand that the common humanity, we all suffer. This is the human experience. We all suffer. We all have problems. We all, and it just knowing that is comforting,
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting you said we tend to isolate when we suffer. And, when I was on the Sinclair method, I found that to be true, because I got the medication. I was like, okay, let me just figure this out on my own. Like, I was so ashamed of my drinking, and I had a hard time getting it. Like, doctors were refusing it to me. So it kind of made me feel even worse. Like, they're making me feel like a terrible person for even asking for this medication, But I remember reading a lot of Brené Brown's work. Like, are you a fan of her work, where she talks about suffering and how, like, when we isolate, it just makes suffering worse, but when we talk about it, and I'm kind of butchering it because it's been a few years since I read the book, but how talking about our suffering heals it. And I think that's so important, especially for people to be aware of who have alcohol use disorder, that maybe we're not even self-aware that we're sabotaging ourselves by isolating and keeping ourselves, keeping this bottled up, keeping it to ourselves. But there's so much healing in talking about it, whether it's with your doctor or a therapist or a coach or something like that. It allows it to breathe and to relate with one another, of people who can relate to your alcohol issues, and to know you're not alone. And that's probably why AA has stuck around. And one of the good things about it is it allows people to connect and share with one another who can relate on this shared suffering of alcohol dependence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the connectedness of just saying, saying the thing that holds us back from that is shame.
Mm,
The shame that we apply to it's very shameful, such a shameful experience to have decades of drinking,
Do you this is something I think about a lot, and I don't have a clear answer to it, but do you think that shame can serve us in some way? Like if we view it from the right lens, like, shame is kind of an emotion, and I don't think any emotion is invalid. It's just like, how do we use it? Like anger can be used to hurt someone, or it can be used to become empowered, for example, if something's making you feel angry. But I'm like, because some people are like, no shame, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an answer to it yet, but I'm like, maybe shame can be helpful if we don't use it as like a weapon to abuse ourselves with, but realize, okay, I'm a little off here. This is causing me to feel shame, this behavior. What can I do to correct it? I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. It basically, our emotions are a warning signal that something needs to be addressed within ourselves. And so, shame in the past, my shame was so shameful. Like, like I felt like I didn't want to feel it at all. So I would drink. Shame perpetuates drinking because I just didn't want to feel this awful shame. But now I'm getting a different perspective about shame. When I feel shame about something like maybe the way that I spoke to my husband, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives me this shame. I'm now able to look at it in a more loving, or I guess like kind way to myself. And I'm able to see, what is this shame telling me? I don't want to feel this way. So let me what is it showing me? What lesson can I learn? I need to improve my relationship skills and not react that way. That's an area of where I need to build up my relationship skills. So it's like shame, you're right, it can be used just like anger to get us to thrive. Like we can become better versions of ourselves through experiencing these emotions. But before the shame, I feel like it was toxic because I didn't know how to handle the shame I was experiencing. So I would just drink more to try to numb it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like when we get in that trap, the like greater hindsight I get on my alcohol use disorder, it's just this trap, this prison that we're in that maybe we're not even totally aware that we're in it. Like I was like, oh, I just really like to drink, or alcohol makes life more fun or better or makes me able to cope with things. But that was just such a trap and such a lie. But the only way I could see out of it is when my brain got fixed. Like I was sober 6 months one time before the Sinclair method. I know you would have bouts of sobriety as well, but kept returning to it because of the craving. But that 6 months of sobriety, I just still wanted to drink every day. Even though I wasn't touching alcohol, it was still very much controlling my life. I didn't get any perspective on how it was destructive to me or how it was breeding my shame and lack of integrity. I just wanted to drink and I was just fighting that urge to drink. But the only way I got like, I guess, a glimpse outside of it was through naltrexone and TSM and really putting alcohol in its rightful place and seeing it for what it really is. My brain no longer being hijacked by the addiction. I could be like, yeah, alcohol's fine, but so's iced tea, so's Coca-Cola, but it was a process of getting there and shifting that version of me, like really becoming somebody who no longer wanted to get drunk anymore and numb out anymore. And that didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen by just taking naltrexone. In fact, for probably half my time on TSM, I still wanted to get drunk. I would take naltrexone and try to get drunk. And sometimes I could, and sometimes I'd be like getting that off switch and repulsion to where I can't drink anymore to get drunk. I remember
like forcing yourself to drink.
There would be times like I would give myself permission, like, that's it, I'm just going to get drunk tonight. And I would take naltrexone and I'd have 2 drinks and I'd be like, dang it, I can't drink anymore. Like I couldn't get drunk.
Yeah, no, that's so real for so many of us. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm so thankful for this method for just giving me that glimpse out of it. But, I think my shame from my drinking came from really, you mentioned earlier, like the integrity piece, because I would wake up and be like, I'm not drinking tonight. And then I would, or I'd be like, I'm just going to have 3 drinks tonight. And then I'd have 2 bottles. And when you do that over and over and over again to yourself for years, you lose trust in yourself, you lose respect for yourself, your integrity goes out the window, and shame just builds and builds and builds because you're constantly making and breaking promises to yourself and to loved ones. And I think for me, like, I didn't recognize what a fragile and dark state I was in when I
Mm,
started TSM. Like, I had buried all of that so much, and alcohol was my like thing to just numb out with every day. I was just I didn't, and again, hindsight's 2020 seeing it now, but I was in
mhm,
such a dark, fragile, shame-filled place when I started TSM, and as that started to gradually lift and I started to heal more, that's where, yeah, like, I don't often talk about this, but I sometimes do, that I had, like, a nervous breakdown on
mm.
TSM. I had to leave my job. I had to take, like, a 3-month leave from work and heal because so much was
Wow.
coming to the surface that I didn't know I'd buried under my, daily battle of drinking for 10 years. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you can relate it with that or if you have anything to say.
Yeah, no, that's so relatable. And it relates also to a couple of my clients that I feel like, they're kind of everything is coming to a head in their lives because they've reduced their drinking. So now
Yes.
it's time to really, focus on inner healing, right? Inner personal work,
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah, my personal integrity was out the window.
Yeah.
But I noticed it. I was like, why do I hate myself so much? Like, I don't follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do.
Hmm.
How can I be a person that I can trust if I'm not following through on anything that I say I'm going to do? So it was like I had like this kind of insight about it, and then I I was wondering, because so the curiosity, I was like, well, how can I become a person that I can trust better?
Yeah.
And then I ended up listening to a podcast, and they gave me like a real practical tip, like, pick one tiny, like, achievable goal that you can do every day for 30 days, like making your bed,
Mm.
something like that, making your bed. And then do it. Like, do it just because you said you were going to do it, not any other reason. Just because you said that you were going to do it. And that will build up that trust. And then you can trust yourself with bigger things. So
Yeah.
it was like I started at the drawing board. I mean, I started from the bottom with this stuff, and little by little, I got my self trust up higher and higher, and then I could trust myself with bigger promises.
And that's where it's at too. Like sometimes I love that advice of just starting small, and that's kind of our philosophy inside Thrive as well for people, just to set small achievable goals that are a bit of a stretch, but that you're like pretty confident you can make, because the greatest form of motivation is progress. And if you see yourself consistently making your bed every day, you're like, well, what else can I do? If you see
Yeah.
yourself consistently logging your drinks or going for a walk before you start drinking or whatever it is, it builds that motivation and encouragement in yourself and starts to get you out of that pit that you're in of alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
Just going to the comments here. Thanks, guys, for chiming in. If others have questions, we've got about 12 minutes left on the live. So Pat's just following up on the liver enzyme thing. Dr. Volpicelli found at the end of the study who took naltrexone had lower liver enzymes than those who took the placebo because they were drinking a lot less. He didn't see evidence of enzyme elevation from the medicine. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And then Kelly is asking, what suggestions do you have for a spouse of a Thrive member? He shares a lot with me about his journey, but I feel like there is more I can do to support him through his journey.
Such a good question.
It's a really good. And
Yeah.
just so you know, like this is something where we've been kind of waiting on our software being that we deliver the program on to be able to do this, but I do have it. I'm like preparing a program for loved ones right now. So hopefully, I don't know if your husband will still be in the program at that time, but we're working on creating something to help loved ones. But I love that question. I would love to speak to it and then hear what Samara has to say too. There's a book called Beyond Addiction, How Science and Kindness Help People Change. And the authors of that book have an online resource. I don't know if it's a program or people you work with, or I know they have books you can get, like workbooks. But they really help families of those who are struggling with addictions. And one of the things that I think is really important is communication throughout this journey, because your husband might be thinking one thing, you're thinking another thing, and you're not seeing eye to eye on the recovery. And of course, nobody wants to feel like their loved one is breathing down their neck, whether it's a weight loss journey or alcohol reduction journey. Like, we want to feel empowered in our, own healing with it and not feel like someone's micromanaging it. But that doesn't mean you can't be involved and ask questions. So one of the things I always suggest is for people to ask open-ended questions to help. Like, instead of like, why did you drink last night? That's kind of a very like judgy, punitive way to understand. It's more about, how did your drinking session go last night? What did you learn? What did you notice? What are you finding difficult? Kind of these questions that spark them thinking about their own healing and recovery journey. And help keep you involved without feeling like you're judging them. It can, we can say the same thing in two different ways. And one way it can come across as like punitive and judgy, and another way can come across as like loving and curious. So being able to feel comfortable with asking these questions, just to better understand and let them talk about their journey, I think that can really help. There's also a monthly call for loved ones of those on TSM. It's hosted by TSM Meetups, but we do have it in our program. Your husband can give you the link, or I can give you the link if you don't have it. And that's specifically for loved ones on TSM. That would be a great place to connect with others who are supporting people on the journey. And then the other thing I'll say is to take care of yourself. That's like a big thing that they talk about in Beyond Addiction, How Science and Kindness Help People Change. That when our loved one is suffering from an addiction, we can get so wrapped up in it ourselves that we neglect our own needs and we deplete ourselves. So I don't know if that's happening to you or not, but to meet your own needs and take really good care of yourself through this process, and realize it's your husband's own journey that they have to navigate. And, Samara and I have seen people, I know Samara has, I have for sure, of like, they'll join our program, they'll start on the Sinclair method, but they don't really want it. It's like their spouse wants it for them or their parent wants it for them. And it's really hard to progress through any type of treatment if you don't really want it for yourself. So if you can be like the cheerleader for your husband and help him understand why it is he wants to make this change, like really encouraging him, thinking about the future, what is he enjoying in life apart from alcohol, like these things can really help encourage him to make this his very own treatment, and that he's motivated to succeed in himself for it. So that's a few things I'll say. What about you, Samara? What would you add to that?
Yeah, no, that was pretty much everything I was going to say. That really well said. I would say, yeah, just repeating this, getting on the same page with your spouse, like that communication piece, like just really communicating. I would say another thing would be like really understanding the science behind pharmacological extinction, like really grasping that and understanding it so that you could actually repeat it back to them. Like that was so helpful when my mom, because she was my TSM buddy when I was getting better, it took her about 3 months to like really understand it, because I had to keep talking about it. And I was like, Mom, it's a phenomenon. You got to check it out. Like, you got to understand this. And then she was able to understand at about 3 months, like that I had cravings, that I couldn't really stop at just one glass of wine. Like I couldn't just stop drink. She was like, why don't you just not drink another one? Yeah. Okay.
Why didn't I think of that?
Why did I think of that? But yeah, so she like really got on the same page as far as like what the science showed and what pharmacological extinction is. And so she could really root for me and be like a cheerleader. So she had my back. It was really, that kind of support with that kind of support, no one will fail. Right?
Yeah. Samara, I love that suggestion. Like, Kelly, if you haven't already read the book, The Cure for Alcoholism, that would be a great place to understand. It's so helpful when loved ones understand, even objectively, like what's going on in the brain when we have an alcohol addiction. Why is it beyond our logic and reason? Why is it that we can't just quit? What is the alcohol deprivation effect? What is pharmacological extinction? What's pharmacological enhanced learning? These are all things that are talked about in the book in a very like easy to understand way, in my opinion. But if you can have that foundational understanding of like what's going on in your loved one's brain and why TSM works for so many people and why it needs time to work as well, that can help you have that kind of foundational knowledge to support their journey, whether it's a drinking day or an alcohol-free day, or they drank too much, and kind of how to, be by their side, when they're going through this. I think that was really good advice, Samara.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, and Kelly, thank you for being here. It's so beautiful that you're here and that you want to
Yeah.
learn these things and that you want to be a better support to your spouse. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And Pat's saying if you're a Thrive member, Dr. Volpicelli does a presentation about naltrexone Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. Exactly. We're doing it tomorrow. It's usually the second Wednesday of the month, but we're doing it tomorrow because we have Claudia coming in next week. But for those who are members, he's doing his monthly Q&A tomorrow, and that's a great place to ask naltrexone questions. I remember we had a problem with this name last time. Nissan. Sorry, forgot.
And I remember. Yeah, I
You
butchered.
remember? Okay, they're asking, can you give a quick explanation of extinction or where I can learn more? Would you like to talk about this, Mara, and then I can jump in as well?
Yeah, I don't know where to start. Extinction. It's pretty interesting. Extinction is used in the dog training world. So behavioral extinction is like a common term within dog training, and it's really cool if you research this. Um, it's well known that dogs can reach extinction from certain bad behaviors with just a little bit of training. Um, and so this is kind of like similar to what we do, but what we do is pharmacological extinction. So we're using a medication to block the reward of the thing that we're addicted to, right? The thing that's giving our brain a lot of pleasure. And then over time, we're going through an extinction process, right? So over time, that craving and that pleasure and the things that come with the behavior, they start to subside until we hit extinction of it. So it's not necessarily abstinence. It's just this level of control. We just have full control. Now we can basically take it or leave it. We don't need to do it. We don't need to drink. But we can drink if we want to, but it's just, we're extinct. We've extinguished the craving, the behavior. We've extinguished it in the brain. I hope that's good, but I know Katie will do a much better job of that.
No, I was laughing when you're talking about the dog training because on our call last night, one of our members was like, I'm just an animal. Talking about extinction. We're all just animals. No, that was great. It's this process. I mean, you said it, Samara. It's this process of permanently extinguishing the behavior through using the medication naltrexone. Now, like we've talked about, there's more than just taking the pill and it's all going to be magic. And I think we've all seen people who have been on the pill religiously for even years and they're still drinking too much. So clearly there's more than just the medication.
Mm-hmm.
But the book talks about this where we're doing the treatment, taking naltrexone and drinking, and that's working toward pharmacological extinction. But we also need pharmacological enhanced learning on the alcohol-free days. And that's where we're teaching our brain to enjoy life apart from alcohol, to cope in different ways apart from alcohol, because our brain is unlearning the alcohol use disorder, but what's it going to learn in place of it? What I've observed is sometimes people will be on naltrexone for a while and they'll even be at a place where they don't even really feel like drinking anymore, but they drink anyway because they haven't given their brain the chance to learn pharmacological enhanced learning, to learn these other things when they have, naltrexone and alcohol-free days. So it really is like reversal of the behavior by doing the behavior, drinking on naltrexone and not getting the reward, and also what you're teaching your brain on those days where you're not drinking, or even in your free time, like before you start drinking that day. I don't think you're in our program, Neeson, but for those that are, our phase 3 course dives into pharmacological extinction and what it is, and pharmacological enhanced learning and all of that. You can search in Thrive Extinction and find all of our articles and resources on it as well. Great question. And just to be clear too, a lot of people think that extinction means abstinence on the Sinclair method, but it doesn't necessarily mean abstinence. It means reversal of the alcohol use disorder. And typically at that place, people have control if and when they drink. Usually they're not drinking most of the time. Some people choose to go alcohol-free at that time. Some people continue to drink following the protocol. But extinction does not necessarily mean abstinence on TSM. It just means the alcohol use disorder has been unlearned or reversed in the brain.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And thank you. Okay, good. All right, we're already at time. Kelly, thank you for your comment. I'm so happy that you say listening to these YouTube sessions really helps me connect to the program. Oh, I'm so thankful. Thank you for being here, Kelly, truly. Yeah, Liam Neeson. Okay, I want to try to remember that, Neeson, if you're here next time.
Liam Neeson, yes.
Neeson. Okay. Well, I just want to thank everyone so much for being here on this live, and those that watch it afterward. Hopefully we'll be back again next month. We try to do these together once a month to answer your TSM questions. We love talking about this and helping you guys. So thank you so much for everyone who joined and asked questions. Of course, if you want support on TSM, check out Thrive, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. We have a private online program centered around this treatment. It's available worldwide, but we only work with doctors in the US. So if you're joining from another country, you'll just have to get your prescription locally. Maybe that will change in the future, but I don't know. And then I also did want to give a plug to Your Sinclair Method. It's yoursinclairmethod.com. Is that right, Samara? Not .org.
I think it's .org.
Sorry. Your Sinclair Method, I think it's .com. Let me see. But this is a place where if you just want to do yoursinclairmethod.com. Okay. This is by C3 Foundation, or they changed their names. Options Saves Lives. They have coaching on there. Samara's a coach. I'm a coach. Other people are coaches. But I wanted to give them a plug because if you just wanted to book a one-off session with a coach, you can go to yoursinclairmethod.com and see their directory of coaches there. So there's lots of support for TSM. Like we talked about, shame can keep us isolated. So if you're on TSM, reach out for support. Don't feel like you have to isolate and do this alone. Like, we understand the coaches aren't going to judge you. Thrive's not going to judge you. We've been there. We're helping people through it. So don't feel like you can't reach out for help. We're here to help you. Okay. Any final?
Beautiful. No, I love that you ended with that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Well, thank you